This program provides education, not advice. Sponsors pay a fee for endorsements and interviews. See the truthayf.com disclosure page for details.
This is where technology, innovation, and personal finance come together.
This is the truth about your future with Rick Edelman.
The truth about your future is made possible by Invesco QQQ. The future isn't scary. Not realizing its potential, however, could be. Invesco QQQ. Let's rethink possibility. Invesco Distributors, Inc.
It's Friday, October 4th. On today's show, Caregivers, plus a conversation with Anna Paglia, the Chief Business Officer for State Street Global Advisors, about some exciting new innovations. Yesterday, we talked here on the podcast about DNR, do not resuscitate, the orders you give medical professionals if you do not want heroic acts provided when you're in a bad physical condition. The link to that podcast, if you missed it yesterday, is in the show notes. Today, I want to talk to you about not being a burden to your children. When you get old and infirm, unable to live independently, where do you want to live? Do you want to live with your kids? Do you want to live in a nursing home? Or do you want to stay in your own home? 77% who are surveyed about this subject say they want to stay in their own home. Not a surprise at all. But think about this. If you're going to live in your own home and you don't want to be a burden to your children and you're unable to live independently, you need help with the activities of daily living. You need help getting out of bed. You need help getting to the bathroom. You need help dressing. You need help getting out of a chair. You need help with eating, let alone cooking and taking care of the house. If you need help with all this stuff and you don't want to be a burden to your children, meaning you don't want them doing all of these chores for you, then you're going to pay for in-home care. That now costs an average of $33 an hour across the country. If you need 24/7 care, the tab is now over $300,000 a year. Can you really afford this? A lot of people turn to long-term care insurance, but only 10% of Americans own that. And think about the impact here. If you cannot live independently, but you insist on living in your own home, or you insist on living in your kids' homes, and they're going to be caregivers for you, well, think about this. 40% of family caregivers say they never feel relaxed. The most taxing of all is providing care to a patient with dementia or Alzheimer's. They say that the physical demands, the financial demands, the emotional impact is massive. And get this, a third of caregivers provide care for 5 years or more. So this is quite a commitment that you are asking of family members. And this is why you need to be thinking about this now. If you have the opportunity, you're in good enough health to qualify for long-term care insurance, and you are financially able to pay for it, that can go a really long way to helping ease the challenge on your children and spouse who might otherwise be burdened with caregiving 100%. So I encourage you to talk to a financial advisor about this, because this kind of scenario is incredibly common today, and it's going to become more common in the future as our population ages. Coming up next on the show, I respond to some of your emails about who I should vote for in November. We'll be back with more here on The Truth About Your Future. Stay with us.
Electricity, a big idea that's inspired countless new ones. From powering the light bulb to virtually powering our entire lives. 30 years ago, State Street launched the Spider S&P 500 ETF, SPY. A big idea that inspired the world to invest differently, and still does. What can you do with SPY?
Before investing, consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. Visit ssga.com for a prospectus containing this and other information. Read it carefully before investing. SPY is subject to risks similar to those of stocks. All ETFs are subject to risk, including possible loss of principal. Alps Distributors, Inc. Distributor.
Welcome back to The Truth About Your Future. I've had a huge number of emails come into me over the past couple of weeks. You'll recall several weeks ago, I did a podcast on my dilemma in choosing whether to vote for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. And I expressed that I was at the time undecided. by the way, as of today, remain undecided. And I invited you to send me your emails giving me your viewpoint as to why I should vote for one or the other. Or, as many of you did, you gave me an email telling me why I shouldn't vote for one or the other, which I suppose is an equally valid course of action to take. And in that podcast where I talked about my uncertainty, I cited one reason why I was having real problems voting for Donald Trump, and I cited one reason I was having a real problem voting for Kamala Harris. The reason regarding Kamala Harris, her proposal to tax unrealized gains in the stock market generated one big set of emails that I received. Over this next month, here in October, I'm going to share with you many of the comments that I got from all my listeners, because the comments that I got were mostly brilliant, very thoughtful, insightful, well-considered, and well-articulated. And there were a few who were a little bit outlandish, full of bias and, frankly, some venom. But the vast majority of you show yourself to be very, very thoughtful and considered in your viewpoint. And I am finding all of your comments to be very, very helpful, and I'll share many of them with you over this next month in an effort to help those of you who are like me, undecided, because we know what the polls are telling us, that the race is incredibly close, too close to call, and that there are, depending on the poll, anywhere from 5 to 15% of Americans who label themselves undecided. And since the election is too close to call, we know that it is the undecideds who are in the end going to choose who our next president's going to be. So if you are among the undecideds, I think you'll find this content helpful in your effort to deliberate. Anyway, the first topic I want to cover with you is the tax on unrealized gains that Kamala Harris has put forth. Here are 3 emails I got. This one from Mike in Fort Lauderdale. Here's what Mike wrote to me.
If Harris gets her wish of taxes on unrealized gains in the stock market, won't that affect the stock market?
And here's another email I got. This one from Chris. He's in Virginia. Here's what Chris wrote.
Hey, Rick, I've been seeing in the news lately that the Harris administration is proposing a 25% tax on unrealized investment gains. Could something like this even be put into law? This seems incredibly destructive for my 401k. Please shed some light on this. Cheers.
And finally, here is an email I received from Greg from Homer Glen, Illinois.
I'm disappointed to see you take a significant political position and avoid endorsing one candidate over another. Your statements on the economy and crypto, with a direct statement stating that Kamala Harris is bad for those topics, is very one-sided, and you are showing bias to Trump. Please keep politics out of your broadcasts. I've followed you for years, and you always seem to be impartial, but not anymore.
Greg, you're right. If you've followed me for years, you know that I've always seemed to be impartial. I have never tried to impose my political views on anybody. What would be the point of that has been my attitude. I mean, half my audience supports the Democrats, half my audience supports Republicans. No matter what I might say politically would only antagonize half my audience. Why would I bother doing that? So I've always tried to be impartial. I've always tried to be factual, simply saying, I'm not going to tell you if this is good or bad. I'm simply going to tell you, here's what happens if. Or here's the implication of. My opposition of student loan debt is not because I don't like Joe Biden. My opposition to student loan debt is because it is such a bad economic strategy that doesn't accomplish what he's trying to accomplish. So that's the tone I've always taken over the past 35 years, and it's the tone I'm continuing to take today. So I don't know that I agree with you that I'm being one-sided and showing bias to Trump. In the case of crypto, which you specifically cited, Donald Trump has specifically come out endorsing crypto. He's personally engaging in the sale of crypto coins and tokens, which itself is a huge conflict of interest and ethical error on the part of the former president. But nevertheless, he is hugely supportive of crypto. Kamala Harris is part of the Biden administration, which is hugely opposed to crypto. So there is no question on the topic of crypto, which is all I specifically said, on the topic of crypto, you cannot be supportive of Harris. End of story. That's a factual statement. That's not bias. Put that aside. There's more to come on The Truth About Your Future. Stay with us right here.
At Schwab, how you invest is your choice, not theirs. That's why when it comes to managing your wealth, Schwab gives you more choices. You can invest and trade on your own. Plus, get advice and more comprehensive wealth solutions to help meet your unique needs. With award-winning service, low costs, and transparent advice, you can manage your wealth your way at Schwab. Visit schwab.com to learn more.
Welcome back to The Truth About Your Future. Let's talk about this issue of taxing unrealized gains in the market. I did a big conversation in my podcast on this show already, so let me just answer the specific questions from Mike and Chris. Mike asked, would the tax affect the stock market? And my answer, as you saw in my conversation earlier, yeah, it would have a devastating impact on the stock market. And this is something that Kamala Harris either doesn't understand or doesn't care. Neither of those answers, I believe, is to her credit. So yeah, you should be downright worried about your 401k, about your IRA, about your brokerage account. If you own investments in the stock market and she persists in pursuing a tax on unrealized capital gains, yeah, this is going to be extraordinarily bad news for the stock market, perhaps irreparably so. Chris, meanwhile, has asked, could this even be put into law? I don't think so. I think it's a ridiculous proposal. I cannot conceive that she'll get the votes necessary in Congress. I'm also not sure it would survive a legal challenge because I'm not convinced that the Constitution grants the government permission to tax unrealized gains. So you're right, it does seem incredibly destructive for your 401k, which is why I'm astonished she would even propose it. Does she hate billionaires so much that she's willing to destroy the retirement security of ordinary Americans? You know, it's kind of like saying, I hate the pilot on my airplane. I hate him so much, I'm going to shoot him, causing the deaths in an airplane crash of everybody on board. I mean, I just don't get it. Do you really hate Kamala billionaires that much that you're willing to behave so recklessly? So, yeah, it would be incredibly destructive to your 401k. It would be incredibly harmful to ordinary Americans. It would cost millions of jobs as companies are discovering their stock prices collapsing. But no, I really don't think it would be put into law, which is why it's so absurd. Why raise an issue that you can't possibly make a reality? I just don't get it. So this is why I'm so concerned about the issue, because if she's going to put forth extreme views like this, then what other extreme views is she going to put forth that have no bearing on reality, that aren't in sync with the desires of the American public, that frankly aren't in our national best interests? So that's my big problem. Now, don't come yelling at me, Greg in Homer Glen, Illinois. Don't come yelling at me that everything I just said shows bias toward Trump. I didn't say a word about Trump. I could argue just as easily that he's got a lot of proposals that are equally ridiculous. His proposal to make Social Security benefits tax-free, to make tips tax-free, to make overtime pay tax-free. Those are equally ridiculous. Neither one of these candidates are offering policy proposals that are good for the American economy. Oh, I think they're pretty good to help them win votes, which is why they're doing what they're doing. But I'm looking for leadership. I'm looking for someone who's going to do something for the greater good, that's going to help improve our economy and our national security. And I'm not seeing it from either one of them. So, Greg, back off. Don't tell me I'm showing bias to Trump simply because I express extreme criticism over Kamala Harris's economic proposals. By the way, economic proposals that are so absurd, even the Washington Post says they are. So take it for what it's worth. I'll have more to share with you on a variety of other topics that'll anger some Trump supporters and some that'll anger some Harris supporters, because I'm going to give it to you both ways to help you understand why, as I'm suggesting today, I remain undecided. One thing I'm not undecided about is Wednesday, October 9. Yeah, we're doing our webinar, Crypto for RIAs, Yield, Staking, Lending, and Custody. You're going to learn all about the investment opportunities that go beyond buying Bitcoin ETFs. So check that out. It's Wednesday, October 9. It's free. You get 1 CE credit. You can register by clicking the link in the show notes. See you there. Coming up next, my conversation with Anna Paglia, the Chief Business Officer of State Street Global Advisors, about some exciting new innovations.
Stay with us for more here on The Truth About Your Future.
Support for The Truth About Your Future with Rick Edelman is made possible by Invesco QQQ. A quarter of a century ago, Invesco QQQ reimagined how people invest by providing access to the most innovative companies on the NASDAQ 100, all in one ETF. With Invesco QQQ, investors saw all the possibilities that innovation could deliver. So what's on the horizon for the next 25 years? See for yourself. Tap into the companies remaking the future. Invesco QQQ. Let's rethink possibility. There are risks when investing in ETFs, including possible loss of money. ETF risks are similar to those of stocks. Investments in the tech sector are subject to greater risk and more volatility than more diversified investments. The NASDAQ 100 Index comprises the 100 largest non-financial companies on the NASDAQ. You can't invest directly into an index. Before investing, consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. Visit Invesco.com for prospectus containing this information. Read it carefully before investing. Invesco Distributors, Inc.
You're listening to The Truth About Your Future. I'm very happy to welcome back to the show Anna Paglia. She is the Chief Business Officer for State Street Global Advisors, one of the world's largest asset managers with more than $3.5 trillion in assets on a global basis. Anna, it's great to see you again.
It's great to see you, Rick. Thank you for having me.
So your new position as Chief Business Officer, that's not a C-suite title that I think most people are familiar with. So tell us how Chief Business Officer differs from some of the other C-suite executives.
Sure, that's a really good question because when I joined SSGA, it was the first question that I asked to Ishin Hang, the CEO, and my new boss. It is very unique. It's not a role that you hear about in the industry. And the way she explained to me, and that's the way the leadership team operates at SSGA, is really easy, and at the same time, it's really compelling. The leadership team is divided across pillars that go really deep in their subject matter expertise. So we have distribution, we have investments, we have CEO that includes ops and technology. And then we have the business officer pillar, which is where I sit. And my team is very much responsible for setting the strategic direction of the company, working together with the CEO for setting up goals, looking at growth plans, 5-year growth plans, 3-year growth plans across the different business lines at SSGA. That includes ETFs, it includes cash, it includes retirement as well. And my team is also responsible for product innovation, so cutting across the different wrappers, mutual funds, ETFs, CITs, SMAs, putting together really the innovation engine and new product development at SSGA.
So I think it demonstrates the forward thinking and broad-based view that State Street has in its business modeling itself. The fact that this kind of a position would even be created, something, as you said, you don't normally see in financial services and asset management firms. I think that really says a lot about how State Street positions itself to be able to serve its investors and advisors.
That's right. That's right. And I would tell you, Rika, this is the one thing that I found really attractive about this job. We have known each other for years, and that I was really happy at my other job. But this new leadership vision at SSGA was the one thing that I found incredibly compelling. The other thing that is really exciting is to see how these different business lines work together and are complementary to each other. So the one thing that people know very well about SSGA is its leadership in the indexing and ETFs segment of the market, with $1.3 trillion in ETFs and $2 trillion in index institutional mandate. It is something that the industry really knows about SSGA. But then our cash business is bigger than I thought it would be when I came here. More than $500 billion in cash and money market funds, and growing by the minute, it feels. And the retirement business. So the focus that the State Street Bank and the SSGA are placing on retirement is a really, really tremendous. And these are 3 different business lines that are not in competition with each other. So there is a very organic way by which they complement each other when it comes to addressing clients' needs. So it's really phenomenal.
So I can really appreciate why they recruited you as Chief Business Officer, a role itself that's unique. You're kind of unique yourself, Anna, in our industry. I mean, you have a wonderful Italian accent.
And in Italy, you got a law degree from Rome, as opposed to most folks in this business with business degrees. And then you went and got two other law degrees. You got one in London, and you got another one, a master's in Chicago. So talk about your background in law and why you find it so applicable and gravitating over to the asset management field, because that itself is unusual.
Yeah, so Rick, that's a fun question. And my journey was anything but linear. Somebody asked me, how did you decide to specialize in finance or financial markets? At what point in time did you discover financial markets? And then my answer is always, I did not decide. The financial markets found me. That was, I want to say, kind of a coincidence or being in the right place at the right time. I started studying law, and my dream was to become a lawyer. And when I graduated the law school, I found a job in a global law firm with offices in Rome. And I was again pursuing my dream of being an IP lawyer. I was doing a trademark, the copyrights, and I was lucky enough to work in the entertainment department of the law firm.
Oh, fun.
And if you rewind the tape, it was 1999, and something had just been approved in Brussels called the UCITS Directive. Mutual funds were very new to the European landscape, which is something that surprises people in America because the history here dates back to the 1940 Act. Well, the 1940 Act in Europe came in 1999. So it was a point in time where there was really very little expertise about the mutual funds and collective investments. And that's where my law firm decided to open and start an investment management division. They had no associates, they had no expertise, and the chair of the firm in Rome decided to tap me into that department. And I thought my life was over. I thought my professional journey, my dream was being crushed. I had no choice but venture into something I knew nothing about and I didn't want to do. But I kept an open mind only because there was no other option. In this day and age, people have so many options, and if they don't like their jobs, they move. At that time, that was the only way to pay rent for me, so I had to get on board with it. And little did I know, I ended up finding my passion, my love for the financial industry, which was something that was new to me. I found it to be very attractive. I was also attracted by the negative implications of financial industry, realizing that at the time, it was not for everybody. So you needed assets to become an investor. You needed money to make more money. Picture that I was working with hedge funds, doing IPOs. Back at that time, if you wanted to buy mutual funds, you had to meet a minimum amount of investments,
Right.
which was in the range of $5,000 to $15,000. My dad made probably $12,000 a year as a school teacher. So to me, that gap between the wealthy and non-wealthy was very interesting. And that's why when I came across ETFs, which was around 2000, they were very new. They were a very new concept for the industry. And it was also a very controversial concept. At the time, not everybody believed they would be a thing. Not everybody knew how to spell ETFs. I made it a point of spending whatever time and intellectual capacity I had to contribute to that industry because I thought it was incredible. I thought it was the bridge between the wealthy and non-wealthy individuals. The idea that with as little as $25 or $50, you could be in the market was unheard of. So I thought, this is my future, and I want to see where this journey is going to lead me because, again, to me, it was about passion. At that time, it was not anymore about having a job. It was doing something you believed in.
And I think that wonderful story typifies the unique aspects that you bring to this industry, right? We've known each other a really long time. And it is, frankly, passion is the key word as opposed to simply wealth. There are a lot of people, as you know, who are in this business who are simply doing it because they're trying to make a lot of money. And they're not necessarily trying to make lives better for others. But your focus has been exactly that with your full history and focus on your dad's scenario, recognizing that ETFs demonetize and democratize the opportunity for ordinary folks to engage in the financial markets. I think that helps drive you. And I've seen it in the decisions you've made, the products you've built, the investment opportunities you've created. And that's what you're now doing at SSGA, at State Street Global Advisors. And it's really exciting to see. So let's delve into some of this now directly. There are key trends that are always going on at any given moment. You've been in the ETF world from pretty much the beginning. We were too. In my financial planning practice, we were one of the earliest users of ETFs back in the early 2000s. The industry has morphed, it has adopted and changed over time with technology. What's going on right now? What would you say, Anna, are the key trends in asset management that financial advisors and investors ought to be paying attention to?
The one thing that continues to fascinate me about this industry is that ETFs keep evolving. The asset management landscape keeps evolving. And the other thing that I keep reading or questions that I keep hearing are around, as this industry peaks, are we looking at an inflection point for the ETF industry or the asset management industry in general? And I do think that the answer is no, because as you may appreciate, and you know that this industry keeps pushing boundaries, evolving and morphing itself based on the needs of clients. And the needs of clients keep changing as well. We are about to witness the biggest transfer of wealth that this economy has ever experienced, with a new wave of investors coming into the market. They are younger. They are not as patient as their parents. They want immediate satisfaction. So I don't know how comfortable they are going to be with a story about a longer-term performance. And they use and consume information in a way that is very different compared to what we have done in the past, our parents have done in the past, the prior generations have done in the past. So the fact that this industry keeps changing, it means it has not peaked. And we are seeing some new trends developing. We have observed everything that happened in the last 5 years, the pandemic, the 60-40 portfolio that doesn't work as well as it used to, the birth of new asset classes, how well investors have embraced the fixed income ETFs after the liquidity of fixed income ETFs has been proven during the heat of the pandemic. So I look at these trends as being the roadmap to future innovation. Those trends are definitely fixed income for decades. The fear that liquidity crunch of fixed income ETFs would not have been able to behave that fear has been lifted. The theory has been put in practice. We have seen it. We have seen the wars of liquidity crunch, and the fixed income ETFs have shown their resiliency. It's not a coincidence that this year alone, 1/3 of the flows in the ETF market come from fixed income ETFs. And if you think about their market share, so they account for 20% of overall assets and they have captured 1/3 of flows, it means they are growing faster than the rest of the market. The other trend that we continue to see is flows to low-cost ETFs. It doesn't matter if we are in a bear market or if we are in a bull market, low-cost ETFs continue to be the instrument of choice for clients to get exposure to big segments of the market. We also see trends with regard to new technology, new investments, digital assets. The story about the cryptocurrencies and digital assets is also a story for the textbooks of the future. When people are going to look back to what we are seeing now, and they are going to write books about Bitcoin, Ethereum. Let's put it into context. It took 3 years for SPY to cross $1 billion.
And SPY, remind everybody what that ETF is.
Yes, SPY is the SSGA, is the State Street S&P 500 fund, which is to date the largest ETF in market. It accounts for over $550 billion in assets, and it was launched 31 years ago. It was the first ETF to be approved in market. So that story of a first, and I like the story. I like the tagline that SSGA used 1 year ago when SPY crossed the 30 years. So when they said, we launched one fund and we created an industry.
It's really true. That fund was the shot heard around the world. It revolutionized the financial services and asset management industry. And I just want to emphasize this for everybody, $500 billion in a single ETF. That's just astonishing. And your point that it took 3 years for that fund to really generate a significant asset flow, though.
That's right. So if you think about where the industry is today with the new asset classes and new technologies, it took 2 days for the first synthetic Bitcoin ETF to cross $1 billion.
What it took 3 years for SPY.
Exactly. And this year, at the beginning of the year, the SEC gave the green light to spot Bitcoin ETFs. And the combination of those ETFs now has exceeded $50 billion in less than 1 year. So if you think about that and you look at the numbers, you can see another trend materializing, which is new technologies, is cryptocurrencies, is digital assets, is the fact that clients are really keen on getting an exposure to their portfolio into new and upcoming technologies. So we keep looking at all of these different trends to really write a roadmap about our growth aspirations. But Rick, products are not just products anymore. So while we look at flows to build a story about products, we also look at client behavior. And our clients are not the same clients that we had 20 years ago. ETFs historically were used by institutional clients because of their liquidity. They were also, in time, also embraced by wealth advisors to build portfolios for their clients. What we continue to see right now is an acceleration in the direct channel. And these are do-it-yourself investors, buy-it-yourself investors. The trend started during the pandemic. We all, as an industry, we were watching it, trying to understand, is this a glitch? Is it just a COVID story that is going to move away once the markets reopen, the concerns about pandemic are lifted? It was not a COVID glitch. That segment of the market continues to accelerate, and it is now double compared to where it was in 2020. These are not disintermediated investors. They are investors who either work with an advisor or place their trades in parallel to what they are doing or working with advisors. But it's definitely a trend that we pay attention to because not only does it influence what we think about the products, but it also influences the way by which we communicate with them. Our language has to evolve. Our marketing standards, our marketing strategies have to evolve because now we need to talk to a different audience that was not our traditional audience 20 or 30 years ago.
So you mentioned the 3 major categories of change. One, a new and important emphasis on bonds, fixed income, because we are now in a changing economic and interest rate environment for the first time in years. And I think everybody is well familiar with what this means. We're all paying close attention to that. State Street, one of the leaders in the offerings in the bond market. The emphasis on cash, which is a huge business. You're right. It was surprising to me too when you cited the statistic on how much cash State Street has, because I don't really think of them first and foremost as a place to maintain cash. I think of them as stocks and bonds. So that really shows how strong and powerful a business State Street has in the cash money market and retirement plan environment. That's second. Third, low cost. State Street has always been a leader in low cost ETFs, which is one of the reasons I think that SSGA has been so successful. And now you're adding the notion of blockchain, digital assets, tokenization as the newest asset class. And State Street has been very active, proactive, I would say, in the launching of those investments. We'll talk more about that in a second. But what I want to do is now go a little bit beyond that. On the one hand, you've got digital assets, ETFs. What about the business operations itself? Do you see the blockchain technology itself, the tokenization technology, changing the way SSGA manages assets, operates its business? Might it have an impact on how advisors provide service to their clients?
Tokenization is definitely going to reshape the financial services industry. You may have seen some recent announcements that the bank issued a few weeks ago with regard to the digital assets working group and the desire to tokenize assets. We have seen that in particular now with our money market fund business, because tokenization is this word that everybody keeps throwing around in the hope that somebody will understand that. But in few words, tokenization is a powerful concept because it's all around frictionless transactions. How do you use your assets and consume your assets without having to wait for settlement periods or settlement times or dealing with the transfer agents? Or how do you get access? And I'm talking about ownership of assets that are not transferable today or require huge amounts of investments to be transferable. So, for example, real estate, real assets. We have been working with a number of partners, including the State Street Bank, to tokenize money market funds. Again, if money market funds become a currency, that's a powerful way of using cash. It becomes frictionless. It becomes as easy as swiping a credit card, or even faster than that. So tokenization is definitely going to be powerful tool, and not only for us asset managers, but also for our clients getting access to cash or property. Everybody's starting with tokenization of money market funds. So that's the easy thing to put on a chain. But then you will transition to other things like real estate. So with one click, you may become the owner of a building and your assets may go up and down based on how many units in that building are rented at any given time or on any given month. Again, this goes to show that tokenization will continue the concept of democratization of assets. But it will do that, it will be ETFs on steroids, because at that point, not only is that access, but it's frictionless.
And how far away do you see this happening? How long will it take?
Well, I don't think it's going to take that long, Rick, because the technology is there. The technology to tokenize a money market fund, tokenize an ETF, tokenize a good or a property, the technology exists already. Now it's really about the deployment of that technology, is finding a number of use cases and providing access to clients and financial advisors. Because it's like a puzzle. You open a box and you find 1,000 pieces. They are all in the box. But now you are going to have to match the black with the black, and you are going to have to make sure that every matching that you do makes sense in the wider context.
Yeah, I think it will be exciting and opportunistic for so many. There are already, as you said, a lot of examples of tokenization in place. The St. Regis Hotel in Aspen, Colorado, tokenized many years ago. You can own a piece of that hotel for $10 by buying the St. Regis coin. There's a condo building in Manhattan that was tokenized in 2018. So yeah, I think it's coming. And when it does, it's going to be like a dam opening up, and it is going to flood the market with these new investment opportunities. So it's important now for advisors to learn about this tech so that you're prepared and ready for when these products come onto the market, so that you're able to adopt them and figure out which you ought to be providing to your clients. So I imagine State Street is going to be spending a lot of time in investor and advisor education over the next couple of years.
Yes, absolutely. To me, this is going to be the next iPhone moment. You open the box, you look at the tablet, you look at the device, and next thing you know, you cannot think of a day when you didn't have it. So it's going to take a while to get there, but it's going to become this big revolution that is going to be just as obvious as unexpected.
Do you see the regulators slowing things down or causing delays as we move from here to there? Or are they favorable? Do they like this idea? Are they helping it along? What's the viewpoint you're saying?
Well, I do think that the regulators are going to do their jobs. And you know what they say, once a lawyer, always a lawyer. We talked about that. So I cannot help but think myself as a lawyer when it comes to these things. Rick is all about the risks and controls. Innovation cannot be unregulated innovation because otherwise it will put investors' assets at risk, which is something nobody wants. In the end, these stories are only as powerful as we ensure that the right risks and controls are in there. And regulators are going to do their jobs. Regulators are going to regulate. To me, the question mark is going to be in the balance because over-regulation is going to push business away. We live in an environment in which geographic borders mean nothing for financial markets. Now, going back to years ago when you couldn't buy a spot Bitcoin ETF in the US, that was not the end of it. If you really wanted to buy a spot Bitcoin ETF, you could buy it in Europe, you could buy it in Bermuda, you could buy it in Canada.
Right.
So the success hinges on the balance. So how do you balance a healthy framework of risks and controls with the opportunity set for investors where financial markets are more open than they used to be? But I think regulators are going to do their job. I respect tremendously what they do because, again, we all want the same thing, which is investor protection.
And so along those lines of protecting investors, do you see any emerging threats to the ETF vehicle or to the ETF industry broadly? Anything we should be worried about?
I don't know that I would classify this as a threat, but I think it's a challenge. And the challenge is everybody today is an expert in financial markets. And social media, if you look at how many people, how many blogs, how many different means of communication are out there talking about the securities, stocks, public companies, segments of the markets, it's a little bit of an unregulated mess. I'll give you an example. I am a FINRA member. I cannot post everything on social media without having compliance. Read through that and make sure that the message is always fair, is clear, is not misleading. If you are not a FINRA member, if you are just a blogger on Reddit or on X or any other social media channel, you don't go through that level of scrutiny.
You can say whatever you want.
You can say whatever you want. And I read stuff that get my hair on fire. And I'm really worried about the amount of overflowing of information and the inability to really differentiate between good and bad information, reliable and unreliable. This is why it's so important for all of us, asset managers, but also all the financial advisors, to step into that vacuum. And again, to me, over-information creates the vacuum of truthfulness because you don't know what source is the most reliable. So it's really important for all of us to play a role there.
And so how is State Street helping meet that challenge? Is there anything that you're doing to protect investors and train advisors?
Yes. If you look at our social media pages, we have tons of materials and we always try and challenge ourselves to strike the right balance between providing enough and not providing too much. Because in the end, if you also provide too much information, people are not going to read it. So thought leadership pieces. You have to be always ready to advise and guide advisors and clients on what's happening in the marketplace and what that would mean for their investments. Interest rate cuts. Whenever there are news about that, we make sure that We have taught leadership pieces disseminated, cascaded down via emails on social media so that people can hear from a reliable source what our macro views are and what we believe in terms of products, in terms of exposure, that means for their portfolios.
So let me shift the conversation a little bit to the elephant in the room, and that's, of course, the election that's coming up in just over a month. You have the advantage of having a viewpoint, or I'd say an observation tower from Europe. You grew up and worked in Italy. Italian politics are widely known as being very emotional and very frequent. And so give us some perspective. What's your take on the election this year? So many are terribly concerned about the divisiveness that is being experienced between the left and the right, the Republicans and Democrats, the liberals and conservatives. How does this compare to what you have seen in European elections?
Well, Rick, I can tell you that this is not different. What's happening here is not different from what I have seen in Europe. The one thing that is different this time around is, you named it, the divisiveness. This election, just like the past election, is very polarizing, which is new to this country, new to this economy, but is nothing new to other countries. You watch on TV some really entertaining, I would say, episodes that happened in other countries amongst the politicians of very different parties. I'm hoping that the election will lift doubts about the future of the country one way or the other. And I think that lifting that uncertainty is going to be helpful for people to start planning into 2025. And I really hope that as a country, we can unite against whatever outcome the election can have, because I think nothing is as bad as the uncertainty and divisiveness that we are suffering today. So anything is going to help.
Let me go back to the crypto conversation. State Street has offered recently new digital asset and crypto ETFs. Everyone, I think, who's listening to this conversation is very familiar with the bond funds that State Street offers, and certainly the stock ETFs led by SPY, the oldest and largest by far ETF in the marketplace. But the crypto ETFs are new and different. And many people are new to this market, very few investors yet participating, but there's a lot of curiosity and interest. So talk with us a little bit, explain the offerings that you have available from SSGA.
Last week, I was at Future Proof, and this question came up. So I have to apologize for those people who were at Future Proof, because I'm going to repeat myself here.
Huh.
But when I think about this, I just thought about a couple of weeks ago, my boys asked me to watch The Avengers Endgame. And I had not seen the movie before, but there is one part of the movie where the villain, and I don't remember his name, Thanos or Thanos, the big monster, the villain, he's talking to Captain America and says, "You think I'm a bad guy. I'm not a bad guy. I am simply inevitable." So to me, that got me thinking about cryptocurrencies. And just bear with me, there is a connection there. And the connection is, it doesn't matter where you hate it or love it, it's inevitable. Having that conversation with your clients is inevitable. As an asset manager, not providing those tools to your clients makes it for a very inevitable conversation. Why not? So if you believe, and again, what you believe is not really about what you believe, it's what your clients believe, because what we think ultimately doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what our clients think. And if our clients really want to get that exposure, it is imperative for us to think about, how do we give that exposure to our clients? This is something that is so inevitable that we have to pay attention. So when looking at the landscape and the future of the industry, and also the flows into Bitcoin ETFs, all the attention about cryptocurrencies, we had to ask ourselves a question, which was, how do we participate in that industry? And of course, we are really good at what we do. What do we do best is ETFs. What we don't do as well as others is have a deep knowledge of that ecosystem, because cryptocurrencies do not live in isolation. You don't get coins being originated out of nothing. There is a big ecosystem supporting that. And we decided to partner with a crypto native. Again, recognizing that this is an area where we are not as big as experts as we are in ETFs. We decided to partner with Galaxy. Galaxy is a crypto native company, and they bring the other side of the coin. They are an asset manager, but they are not well known for ETFs. They don't have ETFs, but they do have mining companies. They do cryptocurrency trades. They are the experts when it comes to digital assets. And by working together, we just decided to look at the ecosystem. So now we have single currency ETFs. When I think about Bitcoin ETFs, I think about single stock ETFs. Okay, now that you have access to one single asset, how do you use that asset in the context of a portfolio? And if you want to stay in the digital assets ecosystem, what are the companies that are going to derive their revenues by participating in that industry? And it's not just the cryptos, it's definitely crypto exchanges and crypto natives. But it goes outside of that. It includes blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, banks, the credit card companies. So how do you give a client the exposure to that ecosystem in a way that is actively managed and really designed to participate in the growth of that segment of the market? So we launched the 3 funds. One is really about the digital assets technology. It's not a tech fund. This industry really doesn't need another technology fund, another growth fund, but it is a tech X. So it is digital assets technology, an active management that spans across industry, different market cycles between growth and value. So it's very dynamic. And then we brought 2 portfolios that really zoom in on cryptocurrencies. One is hedged and the other is not. What we like about Bitcoins is volatility. What we hate about Bitcoins is volatility. So if you love the volatility of cryptocurrencies, you have a portfolio that is unhedged. If you want to get that exposure, but you are nervous about volatility, we have the hedged version. So I'm really excited about this product, about the partnership with Galaxy, because I believe this is another tool in the toolkit that we are giving to our investors.
I was really excited when I heard of your announcement of the partnership with Galaxy Digital. I've known the folks at Galaxy for many, many years. And in fact, I'll be doing a webinar pretty soon with Chris Arine, who is their PM. Of course, you know Chris well. So big fans of Galaxy. And I think you've really shown another area of strength at State Street. Too many fund companies. You've seen this over the decades, Anna. So many fund companies try to act like they're experts in everything, and they come up with this broad array of suite of product, and most of them are mediocre because they really don't know what they're doing, anything special compared to other who really do have expertise. Since you quoted a movie, I will too. I'm a big fan of Dirty Harry, the movies with Clint Eastwood back in the 70s. And Dirty Harry made this great statement at one point just before he blew up Hal Holbrook in his car. He said, "A man's got to know his limitations." State Street knows its limitations. You are, as you said, one of the leading experts in the ETF space. Perhaps nobody bigger and better than State Street. But crypto is a brand new thing. It's a totally different beast. So rather than trying to pretend you have the expertise, just partner with it. And like you said, you have the best of both worlds. So I was really excited that you did that. It showed the self-awareness at State Street and the maturity and the dedicated focus on what's serving the clients best. And Galaxy is one of the top crypto fund managers out there. So I think it is a really good match. So I was excited to see that. And I would encourage advisors and investors to take a look at these ETF products that are now available through the Galaxy SSGA partnership, because it is definitely something you should be looking at. So a final question for you, Anna. I've just been thrilled to have this conversation with Anna Paglia, the Chief Business Officer at SSGA. Personally, for you, Anna, what's the best financial advice you ever got?
Best financial advice was leave it to an expert. because I've been in this industry for almost 3 decades now. I don't do my own investments. I am an investment advisor. I rely on my investment advisor to build my portfolio, to manage my retirement assets. For one reason, it's easy to get emotional. Ultimately, you buy what you like and you buy what you believe in, which may not always be the best way to manage your assets. I was a couple of years ago, holiday conversation. I was sitting down with my brother. By the way, I never get financial advice from my brother. And I asked him what he had in his portfolio. And you name it, you have it. It was like Amazon, Tesla, Microsoft, and then stocks of an Italian soccer team, which is like, I don't even know how you hedge that investment. But anyhow, you buy following your emotions, which is not always good. So you really need somebody who takes the emotions out of your investment decisions. And I find that working with an advisor is the best way to do that, regardless of how experienced you think you are.
That's terrific advice. I'm glad you follow it. And I think a lot of other folks ought to be following that as well. That's Anna Paglia, the Chief Business Officer for State Street Global Advisors. You can learn more about State Street. We've got the link for you in the show notes. Anna, thanks so much. Always a pleasure to talk with you. Look forward to seeing you again before too long.
Same thing. Thank you, Rick. Thank you so much for having me.
How should you think about Bitcoin? Turn to a specialist. For 6 years, Bitwise has been helping investors access crypto. Bitwise manages the world's largest crypto index fund. They also offer 6 crypto ETFs. You get cutting-edge insights, expert Bitcoin research, and a nationwide team to help. Bitwise helps investors and advisors navigate crypto with confidence. Partner with a specialist. Look for ETFs backed by Bitwise. BitwiseInvestments.com. Carefully consider the extreme risks associated with crypto before investing.
I'm glad you're with me here on The Truth About Your Future. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to follow and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. And remember, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I read them all. Never miss an episode of The Truth About Your Future. Follow and subscribe on your favorite podcast app.
How do advances in science, technology, and medicine translate into investment opportunity? Listen and learn.
This is The Truth About Your Future with Rick Edelman.